Welcome back to the Horror Chronicle. Now this is the haunted Stanley Hotel, built in 1909 and designed by Mr. Freeland Oscar Stanley. Note Mr. Stanley was a successful investor in search of a cure to heal his body from tuberculosis. He traveled to a valley called Estes Park in Colorado, convinced he'd die from consumption. He intended on doing it in this beautiful place. But after just a summer, Mr. Stanley began to feel many positive changes in his health and started to feel alive once again, glorifying the fresh air and nature of this beautiful place. Mr. Stanley and his wife Flora planned on building a large hotel in Estes Park that would feature the grandeur and Edwardian opulence of the East Coast establishment, but it's a rustic, western setting. The hotel was surrounded by wilderness, featuring electricity, telephones, modern bathrooms, maids, and cooking staff in professional uniforms. However, the first-class resort helped make Estes Park into a tourist destination, especially after the establishment of the Rocky Mountain National Park in 1915, but by the 1970s, the hotel had fallen into a grave of disrepair due to years of neglect and lack of investment. It had become a shell of its own former self. The Stanley Hotel could have easily gotten demolished had it been by a bizarre and fateful string of occurrences involving a now seminal author and his famous nightmare that took place in room 217. Whoa! Interesting. Now in the 1970s, author Stephen King was working on the stand in Tabitha, living in Boulder, Colorado. On a Friday afternoon, he and his wife Tabitha decided they would travel an hour north to Estes Park for a weekend away from their children. In a recent interview, Mr. Stephen King once stated, "The Stanley Hotel was a very unforgettable experience for him." He then added they were the only guests in the large hotel. That night, King recalled hearing the wind whistling outside his window in room 217 in a horrifying nightmare. The author dreamed of a coiled hose coming to life and chasing his screaming son as he ran down the halls of the hotel. After waking up in a panic, he got up to lit a cigarette and stared out the window. By the time he had finished the cigarette and got back in bed, the rough outline of The Shining was fully formed in his head, the Stanley's connection to King and the terrifying night that inspired The Shining, the hotel's most famous and influential horrifying occurrence. Furthermore, the strange paranormal activities kept occurring repeatedly. After the valley experienced a flood, the 2-year-old hotel's power went out for the very first time. Stanley then took it up on himself to install a glass lantern in each room to provide the guests with lighting. A leak caused a buildup of gas to form in the rooms. The head chambermaid, Elizabeth Wilson, entered the room with a lit candle and set off a massive explosion. Miss Wilson miraculously survived and was launched from the room's entrance to the dining hall, located on the first floor. An estimated 6% of the hotel wasn't as fortunate. One observer reported seeing a sink flying up in the air during the blast. After waking up from a coma, Miss Wilson returned to work in 1913 and remained employed by the hotel until 1950. Miss Wilson's story should have ended there, but no, it continued. According to hotel staff, her spirit remains to inhabit and traumatize those who dare to trespass. Guests have shared circumstances where they have checked into a room to later exiting the room, to go down and have a smoke, then returning to a well-organized room. Another couple have told staff members at the Stanley Hotel of their bed being made up as they slept through the middle of the night. Now that's spooky. Just imagine being wrapped up in your own sheets while you slept, to waking up, feeling as if you were literally being held strapped down to the bed. Horrifying image. Same couple also encountered another paranormal activity, where they felt this mysterious chill, now as if there wasn't already enough traumatizing and horrifying events preceding that. Mr. Stanley ended up dying in 1940 at the age of 91. He lived a long life. Compared to what he had predicted, his presence has also been said to still roam the long halls. Also, I can't forget to mention Rachel Thomas, a tour supervisor for the Stanley Hotel, stated in an interview, "Since I've worked at the hotel, I've seen, heard, and even gotten physically ill." Note throughout the years, staff as well as Mr. Stephen King in flesh, are said to have experienced some sort of paranormal activity in the hotel. Now, is this place truly haunted, or what could it be? I guess we'll just have to go and find out for ourselves. The Stanley Hotel is still open for people that are looking for a good scare. I hope you really enjoyed this content. For more horror, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell.